crowds. He was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and he was a lot more laid back than he is in pretty much any other interview he does where he sounds like a robot. The Rogan one I'm not even done with. It was like 2 hours long. I'm probably halfway through it. I mean, there's really nothing of any great news value to dive into. I just think it's been a mostly enjoyable listen so far. He's got an hour-long one dropping tomorrow with Chris Van Vliet, which should be good. But it's the interview he did with Bill Simmons that made headlines. Really for these two things. First, he claimed that he actually wanted to work a full WWE calendar this year, 220 dates, but that the company told him they only needed him for 36. This is what he said. The plan originally was to do a full year. This goes to show my ignorance of the business. I wanted to do 220 dates. Just take the year off from everything. Hop on a bus, do a full WWE calendar, and totally say goodbye. Thank goodness the business isn't like that anymore. I would be done. They only needed me for 36. He did end up acting during the year. He said a full-time schedule would have been too ambitious. He said, I did too many jobs. I was in Budapest, flying to Indy, do Indy, fly back, land, go film, doing that until post-WrestleMania. Back and forth to Morocco, Budapest, all these crazy places that were not easy commutes. You think you can do it. Oh, I'll sleep on the plane. You don't. It doesn't happen. Then you get upside down and you're super fatigued. I threaded the needle just enough. If he offered to do a full schedule and WWE said they only needed him for 36 dates, they're out of their fucking minds. Especially now when it would have been great near the end of this run to have him around for promos before the match with AJ Styles at Crown Jewel and before the match with Gunther next weekend. The dates they did have him for, it was mostly sellouts everywhere they went. At least meet in the middle and maybe double the number of dates that he ended up doing. I mean, they're out of their minds if they turn that down.
Shut up. Yeah, whatever the heck you are.
Again, maybe he's just kind of explaining it the wrong way. I just find it incredibly difficult to believe that he was offering, hey, I'll do whatever you need me for. And they were like, nah, we just need you for 36. We're good. How did they even arrive at that number?
It's
crazy. And 220 dates, by the way, would have been nuts for him at his age. I don't even know that they ran 220 dates this year, not with the main roster. They don't do house shows the way they used to. They scaled back a lot, and they're going to scale back even more next year. 220 dates, I mean, there's no way John Cena would have survived that without getting hurt. I think that would have been a bad idea. And look, there is something to be said for keeping your attractions special, right? If Brock Lesnar worked 220 dates a year, if Roman Reigns worked 220 dates a year, they would not feel as special. Cena should not be working 220 dates, but if they could have had him for 60 or 70 instead of 36, and they said no to that, that's a swing and a miss by WWE. And then he was asked about the heel turn. The failed heel turn. He won't use that word, but even John Cena, if you really listen to what he says, he knows it didn't work. He was very diplomatic in his response as to why it did not live up to people's expectations. He said he first talked about how Vince McMahon was never in favor of him turning heel, despite the mixed reactions that he was getting from the crowds. This would have been, mid to late 2000s. He said, I think a lot of people were wondering what would happen if John Cena turned heel. Then when I did, it left a taste in people's mouths that they didn't like it. They wanted other stuff. Oh, I wanted a music change, a uniform change. I wanted him to act like this or that. I got 11 months to do this. 36 TV appearances. It takes 5 years to get a guy over regardless. If you turn him, it's going to take a year or two on television for it to really sink in, especially if you really want to get into it and be able to flip and then get a performer to get a nice flip on the other side when it's time to turn again. I don't have the time to tell the right story. I'm going to get back to that in a second. He said when asked if he thought the whole thing was executed perfectly, he said, not at all. What is perfect? Here's what I do know. Perfect is never achievable. I think that's a sucker's chase. When I look back on it, could I have given any more than I did? Not a bit. I over-prepared. I tried to go to every corner of my emotional well-being. Cool thing is, when the audience began to turn, we turned. They helped it out. That dynamic was a little bit ahead of schedule for, let's say, Cody and I, but it made for a great showing for the summer. Let's try John like this. I know we have limited time, but let's do something really big. Okay, it didn't work. Didn't mean that I didn't give it my all. First of all, the idea that it takes 5 years for someone to get over is ludicrous. Unless he's talking about only at the very, most elite level. And even then, there is no one-size-fits-all rule for everyone. Same for this idea that it takes 2 years to get a heel turnover. Absolute nonsense. I could look and say, okay, I'm going to take the very last person that I watched as an example. Who's the last wrestler that I just watched? It was Jake the Snake Roberts. I just watched the Jake Roberts Randy Savage stuff from 1991 because they uploaded it to the vault on YouTube. So this is a great example. Jake was a babyface, right, for many years, and then he went heel. One of the greatest heels, by the way, in the history of that company. It is criminal how short that run was. But he got over as the biggest heel in the company in the span of a few segments on television. You could see it. You could hear it with the crowds. That's just one example. Hulk Hogan flipped from face to heel in one night. It took all of 5 minutes for it to work. And you could tell by all the fucking garbage that was littered in the ring as he was trying to talk when the match was over at Bash at the Beach. It took 5 minutes for it to work, and he had the numbers to back it up.
You know, I really don't have regrets. I am the person.
Minutes for it to work, and he had the numbers to back it up. So I would love to know by what metric or metrics John Cena would define that. I wish Bill Simmons would have pressed him on that, because that's the kind of inside baseball stuff I would really find interesting in an interview like this. And I think Cena has tremendous insight to offer because he was on top for so many years. So I don't even know that John Cena himself really believes that. But let's say that he does. It begs the question. If he felt that way, why did he say yes when he was presented with the idea for this heel turn? The actual answer is because he rarely says no to anything. That's the actual answer. He'll just do whatever the fuck they tell him to do. It's like, okay, sounds good to me, boss. But he's throwing it back on Levesque and creative with that answer. He just has a nice way of saying it so as not to offend anybody. But that's basically what he's saying. It wasn't my idea. I was presented with this idea, and we're like, sure, let's give it a shot, right? It wasn't my idea. I just didn't have enough time to tell the story the right way. And he's not wrong on that. The blame rests primarily on the shoulders of the chief content officer. He's the one who takes credit for coming up with the idea. But there's blame on John Cena as well. No one was scripting out his You People promos, okay? Relying on You People, especially someone of his caliber, someone of his status in the company, that is the lowest form of material that they could have gone with. You People would have made sense 13 years ago. You People does not make a lick of sense in 2025. The best shot they had was that losing streak. He went 6 years without winning a singles match on television in this company. He would dip in and dip out. 6 fucking years went by without him winning a singles match. And now all of a sudden he's back for his final year, and he's this close to the very end. And he grows desperate to win number 17. His ambition consumes him. He is desperate to win number 17 and desperate to break the record. If they wanted it to make any sense, that should have been the story. But let's be honest, okay? As hot as that angle was at Elimination Chamber, and it would have made for some fun television had they fully committed to it, but a John Cena heel turn in his final year was never going to work. And the reason it was never going to work is because they were never going to go all the way with it. Because they were too heavily invested in John Cena, the babyface. And they had too much merch to sell. He wasn't trying to be a cool heel like the NWO guys, right? The NWO sold plenty of shirts. Those shirts sold like gangbusters. That's not what he was trying to be. And the company wanted to make as much money as possible off this final run, and they wanted a new t-shirt in every city. That has always been the biggest barrier to turning John Cena heel. It's the reason Vince McMahon got cold feet on doing it in 2012. After Cena ran out and he had new gear made, he laid down a new track for his entrance, and then it didn't happen because they would be leaving too much merchandise money on the table. Good stories are not the driving force in this company, despite what they would have you believe. Making money is. And if that means going the cheap and easy route to make a buck, then that's what they're going to do. That was the fatal flaw in turning John Cena heel. Other than the timing, with it being his last year, and there were always going to be fans who just did not want to root against him and boo him because, they're buying a ticket to go see him for the final time. It's a little weird when you do that, but then you go and you boo. So that was absolutely part of it. But I'm telling you, the fatal flaw in turning John Cena heel, it wasn't The Rock, it wasn't Travis Scott, it was greed.